Good morning and welcome to session 2 of our Parish online training session. I hope you're all well, sat down, have a cup of tea and are ready for this next session. What we're going to be talking about today is the editing parts of Parish Online. Let me just go through to our next slide. So in this session we're going to be looking at creating features within Parish Online. So this is creating map objects that you're going to store within the system. We're going to look at the annotation tools, which are temporary markups, and we're going to look at the measuring tools as well. So just as a quick summary before we start, so we don't get confused, we're going to be using the create tools, and that's for adding information into structured layers that are used for live editing, storing information that you want to have permanently in Parish Online. And this is stuff that you want to keep and share with your colleagues. So whenever you log back into Parish Online, that information is going to be there for you. The annotation tool is a little bit different. This is for making temporary markups to mark up the map and highlight something that you want to show. This isn't to have the exact data in there. It's for showing, how do I explain this properly? It's for highlighting something that you want to share. If you want to maybe print out a map, you want to point at something, you want to highlight something on that map, but it's not necessarily the main part of the data. Probably confused you more now, but we'll get into it later and hopefully it'll all make sense. The Annotate tool is private to your user account, so if you're sharing Parish Online with other users, that information won't be available to them. They won't be able to see that. That's only there for you. Whereas going back to the Create tool, those layers are available for you. And then the measuring tool is purely a temporary measuring tool within Parish Online, and this lets you find out distances and areas on the map. So you'd be able to draw a measurement, it would give you the measurement there, and then when you close the tool, it will delete. Right, so let's go into Parish Online itself. Switch over now. And what we're going to do now is start with the Create tool. So just to give you an idea of what we're going to use the Create tool for, we are going to be putting map objects into one of two areas. And one of those areas is the parish layers. So if I open up my parish layers collection here, you can see that I've got 4 parish layers. Now these are ones that are created by you from the admin panel, and these are shared with you and all of your colleagues who use Parish Online. So this is where we're going to be putting our structured mapping data. The second place that you would put the structured data is in the asset register collection. So as you can see, when I've opened up this collection, there's lots of pre-templated layers here for you to add information into. Now, we'd highly recommend, before you start creating your own parish layers, go and have a look at the asset register layers here, because you might find that we've already created a template for you that you can use and get started a lot quicker than you would if you had to create your own. So I'm going to start off on one of my own layers because that's less scary. I'm going to do it in here, and before I go affecting my asset register. So all you can see here, what I've done is I've just hovered over the layer and I've clicked it with a single click, and you can see now that it's got a tick associated with it. That means that it's switched on. Now you might not have any information stored in your parish layer from the start. That's okay, and so you won't actually see much difference on the map. But if I zoom in here, you can actually see that I have drawn some information in here already. And just to show you the implications of this, so clicking there hides it. It doesn't delete it, it's just hiding that parish layer. and click it again, that switches it back on. So from the first time I log in, I can go and see what other information I've got in this area. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and find, okay, and you'll have to excuse me because I'm going to use some made up areas. You can obviously use a lot more sensible areas because you're doing things properly. I'm just using my testing demo account, so if it doesn't look right, it's because I'm making it up. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a new object into the grass cutting layer. And the first thing I will do is I'm going to decide whether I'm going to draw this onto the Ordnance Survey mapping or whether I'm going to draw it onto the aerial photography. And so let me just check. I'm going to switch off the Ordnance Survey mapping and switch on the aerial photography. Okay, and in this instance, this is actually giving me a better picture than the Ordnance Survey mapping did. I can see a lot clearer where the potential grass cutting areas are. It makes a lot more sense to me, and I'm going to draw this area out here. So with that all prepared, what I'm going to do is go to Create in the top menu item, and then under there I'm going to click on Add Feature. And as you can see, it's changed this left-hand panel here now. So I don't have the list of layers. What I've got is the feature editor that pops up. And what it's doing is asking me to select the layer that I want to add information to. So that's your first step. That's very important to understand, is when you go to the editor, first of all, it's asking you which layer do I want to add to. And so I'm going to click on Select a Layer. And you can see here I've got the 4 that I've got as private layers, and then I've also got the asset register layers below there. Now I'm not going to add to those yet, but I'll come to that later. And so I'm going to click on grass cutting. And then below there, you see it's now switched into the grass cutting layer, and it's got these 3 fields. Now these are the 3 fields that layer has been set up with, and so it's prompting me to add information into those fields. Now I don't have to, they're all optional at the moment, but I might want to do that if I'm creating structured data and I want to come back and remember it later on. I want to see what's going on. So the first thing I'm going to do is, before I put my information in, I'm going to actually draw on the map. And to do that, this is why you're all listening at the moment, this is how we do it. So you can see I've got this crosshair on the map. What I'm going to do is do a single left click on the map and then move the map away, move the cursor away, sorry, and you can see that this blue line is now following me from that original point. And if I click on the map again, it's now using that second point and it's starting to create a shape. Now this isn't the shape I want, so I'm going to continue tracing around the map, doing a series of single left clicks on the map, and you can see it's starting to build up the shape that I want. Okay, and now I'm done, but I've still got this shape following me around. So I've got 2 options here. I can double click at any point, or I can go back to my original point, and you can see it kind of snaps to that original point. Let me zoom in a bit, make that a bit clearer. Just snaps there. So I can do a single click if it snaps, or I can click anywhere here and double click. So I'm going to let it snap to the final point, and as soon as I do that single click at the end of the object, it's now giving me the save button option, which is good. That means I've successfully drawn this shape, and what I'm going to do now is add some information in there. So let's put some information in. I've already got one called car park, so it's going to be car park 2. Obviously, when you're doing this, you can put a lot more sensible information in than I do. I obviously am just making a lot of this up. And the last quote was 350 quid. Okay, well, you might be able to tell me as a parish clerk whether that's an absolute rip-off or not, but there we go, that's what I paid. Just a note actually, we've got Tom on the chat box today, so if you've got any questions as we go, put them into the chat window and Tom will either field them as we go, or he's going to put them into a list for me and we can take a look at them at the end. Right, so I've got my shape here now. I can't edit that anymore for now, that's fine. Even if I've made a mistake, I'm going to carry on. I've put in my name, the contractor and the last quote, and I'm going to click save. And that's done. And what it's done is it's actually created the shape and given it the style of all of the other objects in that layer. So it's created a consistent style for all of them. So I'm not having to draw the layer and then also style it as best I can. I might not have remembered what particular green I used. I don't have to. Parish Online is giving me that same style. Now, that's one object drawn, and I can stay within this interface here. If I'm doing lots of work, I don't have to close the window and come back into it. I can just start again. Now, even with this crosshair still live, I can drag the map along to the next position. And now I'm going to start drawing a new shape. So I'm going to do a single click and it's starting to follow me. And as I draw around here, a series of single clicks, and this time, just for variation, I'm going to double click to finish this shape. And you can see it put one final point there, and that's created the shape. Now this is going to be called field. And last quote, I've got a quote there. Getting lazy with my data input. And click save. And there we go, that's added that on there. Now, a few little tricks you can do when you're doing this drawing. Let's start another one. Say, for example, I get to one point and I mess it up. I click this point over here and I really didn't want to do that. What I can do is I can use the undo button here, and I can also press Ctrl Z on the map, on the keyboard, sorry. So I'm just going to click this button and that's going to undo my last point. I can click it again and actually it can undo a lot of this shape that I've drawn. So if you spent a lot of time drawing a quite detailed area and you make one little mistake, don't worry, you can press undo and that will take you back a step. I'm going to carry on here, and I snapped onto the first point that I clicked, and so that's closed that shape. And let's put some more information. I'm going to leave these two here blank. You can leave ones blank, they're all optional. And click save. Okay, so I've started to build up quite a nice picture of my grass cutting areas now. Well, nice is debatable, but I've built up a picture anyway. And that is a good start for a particular layer. So you can see it's quite easy there to start to build up the information. It doesn't take very much time at all. It's quite a quick and simple process. From experience working with other parishes, a lot of the information that takes time in collecting is actually what you store in these objects. And that is, depending on whether you're a new clerk or councillor to the area, that's either going to be easy because you know everything inside out, or it might be a bit of a Sherlock Holmes situation. But either way, if you can get that information into it, then it's going to save you time in the long run. Okay, I'm going to close this one now because I'm finished with the drawing. And that was the polygons. So this is creating area measurements. I don't know if I've got any line measurements in here, so I'm going to quickly go and create one. I'm not going to go into detail with this at the moment because we'll do that in another session. But creating a new layer is very easy. I'm going to create a point layer this time. I'm going to call this my test point layer. And I'm going to add some columns into it. I'm just going to put one called name and click save. You can see it's showing it up there. And then I'm going to go back to the maps. Now you can see that test point layer is there. I'm going to zoom into an area. And again, there's lots of examples where you might want to put a point in instead of an area. An example might be a litter bin or an incident of some description. But you can decide whether you're going to use the asset register layers, which are pre-built. Certainly going to have a look at those, or whether you want to create one yourself. So now that test point layer is now available in this drop-down. I'm going to click on there. I have only given it one field name, which is name. And this time it's a hell of a lot easier to click on to add your feature onto the map because it is a single click. That's all you have to do. So once you've got that point on the map and you've got your information you want to put in there, click save and it's there on the map. I can do it again, and if I want to go back to it, I'll have to go back and edit this one, but I can click save again, and there we go. So I can very quickly start to build up a nice picture of whatever I'm drawing. And let's create a test line layer as well to show you that. Again, I'll do this quite quickly. Again, I'm just going to put one column in here, save, and then go back to the maps. Now, you don't actually have to turn on the layer when you go into the Create tool, because it's going to do that for you. So I'm going to go Create and Add Feature, and then Test Line Layer. And with the line, it works very similar to the Area tool, but obviously I'm not going to have to close off that shape. All I'm going to do is do a single click on the map. You see the blue line starts following me. I'm going to do a series of single clicks. And when I get to the end, I'm going to double click, and the save button is available for me, and I'm going to click save. And there we go, that's drawn that line on the map. So those are the three types of features that you can add into Parish Online layers: points, lines, and polygons. Now, if I made a mistake on any of these, I can go back and edit them later on. Now you can edit both the shape of the object, and you can also edit the information that's stored within the object. So let's start with our grass cutting layers again. And to go into the editing tool, or the editing environment for this shape, what I'm going to do is click on the object I'm interested in. And what it will do on the left hand side is it will bring up all the information about it. So I can see that I've got the area, who created it and when it was created. And then I've got these options to attach documents to that object, edit it, and delete it. And what happens sometimes, which some people get caught out with, is they might click on an area where it's not sure whether it's clicked on found one or two objects. And in this scenario, it's found some objects in the grass cutting layer, and it's also found the parish boundary. So in this scenario, it won't go straight to that summary of the object. It will first ask you, what are you actually trying to look at? So I'm going to have to tell it I'm looking at the grass cutting layer, and now it says, okay, fine, which one? Because I clicked between the two. And so to work out which one it was, okay, I've got good names in here, but it also highlights it on the map. So as I hover over, it will highlight it. So I'm going to click on Car Park 2, and now it takes me to the summary page. And then from there, I can go into edit the feature. So I'm going to click on this pencil icon in the top, and that switches me back into the editing mode. And I can change the information here as much as I like. Price has gone up. And I can also change the shape of the feature. So the best thing to understand here is that on these, wherever you clicked on the map, there is what we call a node, or a little junction in the shape. And the cursor will snap, or this little blue icon will snap when it finds one of those. And it will also allow you anywhere along the line to create a new one, to create a new junction. So if I go to this corner one, I can left click and hold down, so it's just a left click hold, and drag this around to where I want it to be. Let's do that again. So I'm just going to hold down the left click and move it around and just release. So left click hold, drag and release. So that's fine, I can move it into this corner where I wanted it to be, but as you can see here, I've done this a little bit wrong, but I don't have any nodes along here, any little junctions along here. What I can do is, anywhere along this line, I can do a left click drag, so holding down the left click mouse button and dragging this shape. And what it's done is created a new junction in that point, so you can see it snaps to that one there. And I can do this at any point along that line to improve the accuracy of what I've drawn. And so if you imagine you're just pulling or stretching this shape into place, using the junctions and creating new bits of detail where you need to. There we go. Now if I click save, that will update that shape. I can click it again, just to remind you, and then go into this edit feature, takes you into this shape again. And again, anywhere I can drag this to make any kind of shape I want, as detailed as I like. And I'm actually, obviously I've just ruined this now, so the best thing to do is press the X button here, which takes you out of the editor, and it's going to say you've got unsaved changes, do you want to continue? Yes, I want to get rid of those unsaved changes. There we go, that takes me back. So that's editing an area feature. Let's go and edit this line. So I'm going to click on it, clarify that I want to select the object within that test line layer, and then click on edit this feature. And as you probably guessed, it's exactly the same process here. So where there's junctions, I can move the junction, or I can create more detail in between. And you can see that actually, look, this looks quite bad now, and it's because I drew it quite far zoomed out. So that's a very useful point, is when you're drawing these features, think about how detailed you want them to be. Do you just want to be able to view them at a very small scale, and in which case drawing them quite roughly is absolutely fine? Or do you want a bit more detail, in which case you'll need to zoom in and apply a bit more detail there. Once I'm done with that, I click save and it updates the shape. It will also, when you do those updates, edit the length as well. So this has now got a new line length there. That's a very useful thing to go and see how you've changed that shape. And then finally, let's go and edit those points. So we're going even easier in terms of simplicity here. I'm just going to click on that point, go to edit this feature, and now you've just got one blue marker for me to drag and drop. You can put that anywhere and click save. Now, if you wanted to delete any of these, you may have seen that just now. In fact, I think I mentioned it, is when you click on the object to go into the summary page, you've got a bin icon there. I can click on that and it says, are you sure you want to delete this feature? Cannot be undone. Okay, thanks for the warning. Okay, and that's permanently deleted it from the map. And so, as you can guess, that is exactly the same with the lines and with the points. There we go. So that was drawing information into the parish layers. Now you'll be pleased to know that adding information into the asset register has exactly the same process, but you will find that there's more information in terms of what information it's asking for in those layers. Let me just switch on all of my asset layers there. That was a little trick. If you right click on the collection, you can say toggle all of the layers, and that'll switch all of them on at the same time. If you've got hundreds of layers in your parish layers collection, for example, maybe don't do that. It will at least slow down your browser a little bit. But here I've got 20 or so, not even 20, so that's not too bad. And here I've got a lot of points. I'm going to click on this street light, and you can see that I've put some information in here, but I haven't put the replacement value or anything else here. So I can go into edit this feature, and you can see this time it's actually got a drop-down box here. All of these are free text boxes, but this one's actually a drop-down. And the reason we do that is we have different subcategories within an asset register layer. So this is an outdoor property layer, and I've got things like youth shelter, sign, refuse bin, notice board. I'm not going to change this because this was a street light, but I can add anything else in here that I wanted to. So replacement value, let's put something in. And the last inspection date was today. And click save. So I've not changed the geometry of this, I've not moved where it was, but I've added some extra information into here. So that's really useful for you to use Parish Online as a live document for these assets. So when I go back to this, I've now got that replacement value. And you can see that I actually created this on the 10th of January. And you can also see now when I've edited it on the 23rd of January. So that's a useful record of what's gone on with that object. Let's add something to the asset register. So I'm going to go create and then add feature, and then I'm going to select my layer. And let's put in trees. So I've clicked on tree. I'll probably switched into the aerial photography mode instead. Okay, let's put a fake tree here. And here now you can put different information about that tree. And you can see this has been tuned by BHIB Council Insurance to give us the information that they would like to see you record for these layers. So you've got things like actions for it, observations, the species, height, stem diameter, age, whether it's TPO'd. So you can put all of this information as you wish to build up a really good picture of your parish. Okay, in this example I'm going to put in nothing, which is really bad. There we go. So I've added that in, and it's given it the styling that has been predefined for that layer. I'll close that. Then if I go and info click it, you can see, there you go, it's got all the empty fields that I could have put in. Let's go and create something from another layer, maybe ground surfaces. Okay, I've got a category here, and this is going to be tarmac surface. Okay, I can actually put in something relatively realistic here. Although I imagine the parish doesn't own this pub. So you can see I'm doing this quicker now, but hopefully you got used to it. What I'm doing is a series of single clicks on the map. I've got to the end, and I'm just hovering over here, and I'm going to double click, and that finishes my shape. And click save. And there we go, that's added it into the map. Now it doesn't matter whether you put the text information in first or whether you draw the shape first. I would recommend drawing the shape first, because once you've drawn it, it's a lot easier to write this down because you can refer to it here. Whereas if you're putting in tarmac surface number 1, for example, and then you go and draw it, you might have put in the wrong shape on the map. So I would always do the geometry first, the shape first, and then I would do the text information afterwards. Okay, I'm going to close that. So we'll recap that at the end, but that is the essence of using the Create tool to add features into Parish Online layers. The next thing I want to show you is the Annotate tool. Right, so firstly I'm going to switch all these layers off. I'll probably toggle them all on and toggle them all off. Okay, so the Annotate tool, in fact actually I'm going to put the grass cutting one back on, just for context. So the Annotate tool is not designed to store structured data, because it doesn't give you those drop-down fields or the text fields to store that information. These are purely graphical doodles on top of the map. So some people get confused about this and end up putting a lot of information into their Annotate tool, and then they accidentally press delete all and it's all gone. The parish layers and the asset register kind of protects you from that a bit more, and allows you to put more useful information in. But the Annotate tool does have its place, and it's used in quite a few areas of Parish Online. And it's accessed from the Tools menu here, and you can go to Annotate. And what that does is on the left-hand side, it gives you a new interface here, and it gives you the option to add points, lines, areas, and labels. And when you click on those, some of them will also give you sub-menus to add to. So I've wanted to put a line in, but I can also make it an arrow. Let's try one of those first actually. So I've clicked on line, and I've clicked on arrow. I'm going to make this a blue arrow, and I'm going to make it quite thick. And you can see that in this example, it's actually giving me the ability to add styling to this object. That's fine, but it means that each time you do this, you're going to have to do it the same way if you wanted structured data. So remember that if you find yourself doing this, you probably should be using a parish layer instead. Okay, I'm going to put a label on, and it's going to say, cut this please. And now I'm going to draw my line, doing a left click and then a double click. So that's just a normal straight line, and click save. And you can see now that's a very good example of the structured data here, car park, grass cutting area, and an annotation. This is just telling me something or highlighting something on the map that I want to communicate to someone. And I close that. And so the best example of this is now if I wanted to go and print something, I could create a print here, and when I give it to the grass cutting contractor, he knows which one I've got to go and cut. I've pointed at it. And the annotation layer is toggled on and off. It's not in any of these layers here because this is all structured data. The annotation tool is just toggled by clicking on this little speech mark button here. And so even if your Annotate tool is switched off, when you go into the Annotate tool, it will switch it back on for you to show you that you've got some information already in there. If I wanted to create an area, I'm going to do exactly the same process as I did when I was creating data. I'm just going to do a series of single clicks on the map, and I'm going to choose my opacity and click save. So you can start to kind of doodle on the map, but remember this isn't a permanent record. And I can do other things as well, like under area I've got circle. Now let's draw one here. With a circle I can do a single click on the map, and then just by moving my mouse you can see that this circle is now following me. And on the left hand side you can also see that the radius is live following me as well. So it gives me a very good example of how big this circle is going to be. If I do a single click, that closes off the shape, and I press save, and that's created a circle for me. If I wanted a circle that was a very specific size, I'm going to click on the map as normal, and it's going to start bringing this up. And then I'm going to override this by putting in my radius there, and I can change the units there as well. So I wanted a very specific size area, so I put a 50-meter radius cordon around that point. Click save. That'll add it onto the map. And at this point you can probably see that using the Annotate tool it can get very messy very quickly, and that's why we like using structured data with the Create tool and not necessarily the Annotate tool, but it does have its place. One good example of the use of the Annotate tool is if I quickly wanted to see how many people within a 50-meter or whatever the area I had, radius I had for this one was, I can click on it, and with this 3 buttons drop down I can go to Data Extract and extract all the address points from within that area. But we'll go into detail on that in another video. So, as you can see, I've completely ruined my map now by adding loads of annotations onto it. I could toggle them off if I wanted to keep them for later, or I can go and delete them. And to do that I go back into the Annotate tool, click on Delete All, type in delete, and then delete, and then they're all gone again. They're permanently deleted. As you can see, we've got an undo button, which is exactly the same as how it was in the Create tool, and you can reset it as well by getting rid of all the shapes on the map to start that particular drawing again. One thing that's quite good with the Annotate tool is if you wanted to label something, you don't normally have a specific label feature in one of your structured layers, but as you can see these features do have labels, there's a way you can do that in the styling tool that we'll go into detail again. But to add a label, I can just do a single click on the map. As you can tell, I'm in the mood for putting very important data on the map. There we go, I've just put a label on there. And that will scale to a point actually. It will keep the scale on the map. Okay, and I can delete individual items by clicking on it, click on annotation layer. It reminds you here that it's an annotation, so it's not got any structured text information. And I can click on delete and it will get rid of it. Okay, so that's the Annotate tool. So adding points, and with points you've got different types of points here. So you can put in stars, lines, and the arrows. I mean, I use the arrows quite a lot, so go and see how you get on with them. My recommendation would be to make the line width a bit larger than 1, because when you do it, it gives it a better arrow point on the end. If it's a very thin one, let's do that for example. You can see that the arrowhead's very small. It is there, but it's very small. Okay. Right, now the final thing I want to show you is the measurement tool. Now, I've already hinted that you can get measurements of things by info clicking. So if you can, if you've got an area that already exists, you can info click on it and it will give you lots of information about it. So for this area, it's given me the area, the centre, the centroid, which is a coordinate. That's actually the average from between the east and the west of it. So that point's going to be about there. That's the centre of the map, centre of that point rather. And then perimeter, so 136 metre perimeter. That's all useful information if I want to go and refer to structured data. Say for example this was a fenced off area and I wanted a quote for fencing. I don't have to go and walk the thing with a trundle wheel, I can just know that that is 136 metres. But there might be examples where you just want a really temporary measurement. You don't want to have to add anything into the structured data. So to do that, I'm going to go to Tools and I'm going to go to Measure. And again, it's changed its left-hand action panel and I've got two options. I've got length and I've got area. So let me do area first. Okay, so this is some new housing that's going in. Very quickly I've done that. I've done a series of single clicks on the map and then I've gone back to the original point. And you can see down here that it's given me an area measurement. Now if I wanted to change the units of that, I don't want to see it in hectares, I can click on this drop down here and then I've got different units to choose from. Let's choose square miles. And you can see now it's changed that to square miles. Now these three buttons here, I can remove this measurement, although it's a temporary measurement, so it will be deleted when I close the tool. I can copy it to the clipboard. This copies that measurement to the clipboard. So if I was doing some work where I was copying areas from Parish Line into a spreadsheet, then I might want to do that. Or I can save it to the annotation layer. So if I've drawn this very detailed area out and I realise that I do want to save it just temporarily in the Annotate tool so that I can come back to it later, I can save it there and that will put it into the Annotate tool. I can go and do another one here, so a series of single clicks on the map. You can see when I cross over here, just try not to cross over, that's going to create some confusing results. And then again, I can either double click or I can snap back to that original position. Going into length, that's exactly the same thing as when we were drawing lines. And double click, and that finishes it. And I can set different measurements on here as well. So if I want to measure out a kilometre, you can see that I've got this live measurement here. So I know how far I'm going to get before I get to a kilometre. I've already gone too far. Let's go for 2. Okay, so that's 2.01 kilometres. Now, the thing with this is I can clear all of these measurements, and when I click the X button here, they're all going to disappear. They are completely gone now. There's no way of getting those back. So that's a good point to note, is when you're drawing this, remember that there are levels of permanency within Parish Online. If you want permanent data, draw data into your Parish layers or the asset register. If you want to mark up the map for something temporary, kind of semi-permanent, you can use the Annotate tool. And if you just quickly wanted to measure something, use the measurement tool. Okay, those are the 3 areas that I wanted to cover today. What I'm going to do now is ask Tom if he's got any questions from the chat box, because I haven't been looking at it. There might be a lot of abuse in there, or there might be nothing, I'm not sure. So we'll ask him to have a look at that. In the meantime, I'm going to just quickly recap all of these features and do them really quickly. So I'm going to quickly go in and do what most of you will end up doing a lot of, and that's adding areas in. So I'm going to go to Create, Add Feature, select the layer, go to Grass Cutting, and then do a series of single clicks on the map, and then go back to my original point and click Save. And close that. Okay. Right, so let's go back to my little slideshow here. And let's summarize these. So some scenarios where you'd want to use either of these 3 tools. So if you wanted to store records of your assets, then you should definitely use the Create tool and use those asset register layers. If you wanted to plot the grass cutting areas, then again you're using the Create tool. And if you were marking out land as part of a neighbourhood plan for potential housing, then I would certainly create a new Parish layer, call it potential housing, and add information in using the Create tool, because then that's going to be there as a permanent record that you and your colleagues can refer back to at any point. If you wanted to highlight something ready for a printout, say for example highlighting or pointing to an object that you wanted someone to be particularly interested in, then I would use the Annotate tool. And if I wanted to draw a circle that I then was going to extract some information out of using the Data Extract tool, then I would use the Annotate tool. And if I just wanted to see how long a road is, I would use the Measurement tool. Okay, and that's all we've got for this session. Tom's come back and said there are no questions, which is good. That was either a really boring session or I covered everything I needed to cover. Just to give you a brief overview of how you can access Parish Online. Parish Online can be accessed from a trial. You can get a 30-day free trial through our website, and that can either continue into a full subscription or you can cancel it if you don't like it at that point. If you don't like it, please tell us why. That's really useful to get feedback on it. You can sign up now and get the benefit of a 10% discount off your subscription, and that is for as long as you keep the subscription going. so that 10% discount will stay with you. And also as a reminder, BHIB Council's Insurance are offering Parish Online subscriptions for free as part of their policy. So if you take a new 3-year BHIB Council's insurance policy, they will give you Parish Online. And the reason they'll give you Parish Online is because they believe in the idea of adding structured asset register information onto a map so that you can reduce your risk. Okay, that's all for this session. So thank you very much for listening, and as always, this will be available to replay on our YouTube Parish Online page. So if you want to go back through any of this, you can rewind to the important bits and view it again at any time. Well, thank you for listening. Please subscribe to this channel because that will give you notifications of when we get new videos or new live sessions on there. And please go to our website, parishonline.co.uk, and have a play with it yourself. Okay, thank you very much.